Iran just launched the most dangerous weapon in its entire arsenal, and it changes everything about how this war gets fought from this moment forward. The Sejjil ballistic missile, 18 meters long, 23 tons, a range of 2,200 to 2,500 kilometers, enough to reach every square inch of Israel, every U.S. base in the Middle East, and every Gulf capital from Tehran. But the range isn't what makes it terrifying. What makes it terrifying is that this missile dances. It literally zigzags through the sky during its final approach, making it nearly impossible for any missile defense system on Earth to calculate where it's going to land. The IRGC confirmed today that it launched a Sejjil for the first time since this war began, as part of their 54th wave of retaliatory strikes. And tonight on War Clock, I'm going to explain exactly what this missile is, how it works, why it's different from everything Iran has fired so far, why Israel's already depleted interceptor stocks just became a crisis, how much it costs to stop one of these, if you even can, and why a single missile expert just said the quiet part out loud. This war is now a race to see whose ammunition runs out first. Every technical detail matters. Let's go. The Sejjil is Iran's crown jewel. It's a two-stage solid-fuel ballistic missile, and that distinction between solid fuel and liquid fuel is the first reason defense planners across the region just lost sleep tonight. Most of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal runs on liquid fuel. Liquid fuel missiles need to be fueled before launch, a process that takes time. During that fueling window, spy satellites can detect the activity. Heat signatures change, chemical traces appear. Launch preparations become visible from space. Intelligence agencies can alert their military counterparts. Interceptor batteries can be repositioned. Early warning systems can be activated. You get minutes, sometimes hours, of advance notice. Solid fuel missiles eliminate that entire window. The Sejjil comes out of storage ready to fire. No fueling process, no chemical traces, no extended preparation visible to satellites. The launcher drives to a position, raises the missile, and fires. The entire sequence from movement to launch can happen in minutes. By the time a surveillance satellite passes overhead, the missile is already in the air, and the launcher is already moving to a new position. This is why every advanced military in the world considers solid-fuel ballistic missiles a fundamentally different threat category than liquid fuel systems. And Iran just deployed its most advanced one into an active war for the first time. But the fuel type is only the beginning of why the Sejjil is a nightmare for missile defense. The real technological leap is in what happens after launch, during the terminal phase when the warhead is screaming toward its target. This is where the Sejjil earned its nickname, the dancing missile. Here's how conventional ballistic missiles work. The missile launches, climbs into the upper atmosphere or near space, and then the warhead separates and falls back toward Earth on a predictable parabolic trajectory, like throwing a ball. Defense systems track the warhead with radar, calculate the trajectory, determine the exact point of impact, and launch an interceptor missile to that calculated point. The interceptor arrives at the right spot at the right time and destroys the warhead. It's complicated engineering, but the physics is straightforward, because the incoming warhead follows a predictable path. Radar sees it. Math predicts where it's going. Interceptor meets it there. The Sejjil breaks that equation. Its warhead features what's called a Maneuverable Re-entry Vehicle, a MaRV. Instead of following a predictable parabolic arc, the Sejjil's warhead performs continuous zigzag maneuvers as it descends toward its target. It doesn't fall in a straight line. It dances, it weaves. It changes direction repeatedly throughout the entire terminal phase, the exact window when defense systems need to calculate a solution and launch an interceptor. Think about what that means for a missile defense operator. Your radar picks up the incoming warhead. You start calculating the trajectory. But the trajectory keeps changing. Every fraction of a second, the warhead shifts direction. Your computer calculates a point of impact, but by the time the interceptor reaches that point, the warhead has moved somewhere else. You recalculate. It moves again. The undulating motion creates a continuously shifting target that defeats the fundamental mathematics that missile interception depends on. The only countermeasure is brute force, launching multiple interceptors in a grid pattern that covers all possible approach angles simultaneously, Instead of one interceptor per incoming missile, you need 3, 4, 5, or more, each covering a different possible trajectory that the maneuvering warhead might take. And even then, success isn't guaranteed, because the warhead can maneuver between the interceptors. And there's a third layer of technological advantage that makes the Sejjil even harder to defeat: anti-radar coating. The missile is coated with material that reduces its radar cross-section, similar in concept to the stealth coatings used on American B-2 bombers and F-35 fighters. This doesn't make the Sejjil invisible to radar, but it makes it harder to detect, harder to track precisely, and harder to lock onto for interception. So defense operators face a triple problem simultaneously: a missile that's difficult to see on radar, difficult to predict because it maneuvers, and requires multiple interceptors per engagement instead of one. Now, let me put this in the context of what's happening in this war right now, because the timing of this deployment is not coincidental. Israel just informed the United States that it is running critically low on ballistic missile interceptors. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, the systems designed specifically to defeat exactly this category of threat, are being depleted faster than they can be manufactured. Iran has fired approximately 700 missiles and 3,600 drones in 16 days. Each interception burns an Arrow interceptor that costs millions of dollars and takes months to produce. The magazines are running dry, and now Iran deploys the Sejjil, a missile specifically designed to defeat those same interceptor systems, and one that requires multiple interceptors per engagement to have any chance of stopping. At the exact moment Israel is running low on interceptors, Iran introduces a weapon that forces Israel to use more interceptors per incoming missile. The math is devastating. If Israel was burning through Arrow stocks at an unsustainable rate against conventional ballistic missiles, the Sejjil accelerates that depletion exponentially. Mark Kanchan, a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, one of the most respected defense think tanks in Washington, said the quiet part out loud. He said, quote, "This is a race to see whether our stockpiles will run out first or Iran's missile stockpile will. A race to depletion, not a race to victory. A race to see who runs out of ammunition first." And let me give you the cost comparison that makes this race even more terrifying. Iran's Shahed 136 drones, the ones they've been launching by the thousands, cost approximately $20,000 to $50,000 each to produce. A single Patriot PAC-3 interceptor, the missile used to shoot down those drones, costs approximately $4 million. $4 million to destroy a $20,000 drone. That's a cost ratio of 200 to 1 in Iran's favor. Iran can build 200 drones for the price of one American interceptor. The Sejjil is more expensive to produce than a Shahed drone, but it's still a fraction of the cost of the interceptor systems needed to stop it. And because each Sejjil requires multiple interceptors due to its maneuvering capability, the cost ratio becomes even more lopsided. Iran is fighting an economic war of attrition through missile technology, forcing the US and Israel to spend tens of millions of dollars stopping weapons that cost a fraction of that amount to build. And they're winning that economic equation. Iran possessed approximately 2,500 ballistic missiles before this war started, ranges from a few hundred kilometers to over 2,000 kilometers. They've fired 700 missiles in 16 days, roughly a quarter to a third of their estimated pre-war stockpile. But the Sejjil represents the top tier of that arsenal, the weapons Iran held in reserve for exactly this kind of moment. When the conventional missiles have stressed the enemy's defense systems to the breaking point, you introduce the weapon designed to break through those weakened defenses. The IRGC confirmed the Sejjil was launched as part of their 54th wave of operations, targeting what they described as a command center related to Israeli Air Force operations. 54 waves of attacks in 16 days. That's more than 3 waves per day, every day, since the war began. The operational tempo is relentless, and each wave is designed to further degrade the defensive systems that stand between Iranian warheads and their targets. And the Sejjil's 2,200 to 2,500 kilometer range means nothing. In the Middle East is safe. Tel Aviv is within range. Haifa is within range. Jerusalem is within range. Every U.S. military installation in the Gulf is within range. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, within range. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, within range. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, within range. Camp Arifjan in Kuwait, within range. Bahrain's 5th Fleet Headquarters, within range. The Sejjil can reach every strategic target in the region from launch sites deep inside Iranian territory, far from the border areas where Israel and the U.S. have been concentrating their strikes. Now let me explain why this specific missile deployment changes the strategic calculus of the entire war. Up to this point, the U.S. and Israel have operated under the assumption that their missile defense systems could absorb Iran's attacks indefinitely, that the combination of Arrow, David's Sling, Iron Dome, Patriot, THAAD, and Aegis naval systems would create an impenetrable shield while offensive strikes systematically destroyed Iran's launch capabilities. That assumption just collided with 3 realities simultaneously. Reality 1, Israel is running out of interceptors. The shield has a finite number of rounds, and it's approaching empty. Reality 2, the Sejjil requires multiple interceptors per engagement, accelerating depletion of already scarce stocks. Reality 3, the Sejjil's solid fuel capability means Iran can launch with minimal warning, reducing the time available to prepare defensive responses. The IRGC knows all 3 of these things. The deployment of the Sejjil now, on day 16, is not random. It's calculated. They waited until Israel's defenses were stressed to their limits, then introduced the weapon designed to overwhelm whatever capacity remains. This is textbook military doctrine. Attrit the enemy's defenses with cheaper weapons, then strike with your most capable systems when those defenses are weakened. And there's one more dimension that nobody in the mainstream coverage is addressing. What happens when a maneuvering warhead, carrying between 500 and 1,500 kilograms of explosives, gets through a depleted defense network and hits a populated area? Because that's not a theoretical question anymore. Tel Aviv has a metropolitan population of over 4 million people. A Sejjil warhead carrying 1,000 kilograms of high explosives, maneuvering past exhausted interceptor batteries, landing in a dense urban area. The casualty count from a single successful strike could be in the hundreds. And Iran didn't deploy just one Sejjil. The IRGC described this as the first Sejjil launch of the conflict, implying more are coming. The Sejjil has been in Iran's arsenal since approximately 2009. They've had 17 years to manufacture, test, improve, and stockpile these missiles. The exact number in Iran's inventory is classified, but defense analysts estimate dozens, possibly more than 100. Each one a dancing warhead that eats through interceptor stocks and pushes closer to breaking through Israel's defensive shield. CENTCOM has destroyed over 2,000 targets in Iran, 19 ships, and 1 submarine since the war began. Israel has struck more than 200 targets in just the last 24 hours alone. They've killed senior IRGC commanders including Brigadier General Abdullah Jalali Nassab, the IRGC Chief of Staff, the Defense Minister, and the IRGC Commander-in-Chief. The offensive campaign is devastating Iran's military infrastructure, but none of that matters if a single Sejjil gets through and kills 300 people in downtown Tel Aviv. This is the asymmetry of modern warfare. The U.S. and Israel can destroy every building, every base, every headquarters in Iran, but Iran only needs one missile to get through. One maneuvering warhead dancing past depleted interceptor batteries. One 1,500-kilogram explosion in a city of 4 million people. The offense can win every battle and still lose the war if the defense fails once. Mark Kansian called it a race. He's right. But it's a race where both runners are exhausted, both are bleeding, and the finish line is whoever collapses first. Israel's interceptors are running low. Iran's missile stocks are depleting. The question is, which one hits zero first? And what happens in the moment between when one side runs dry and the other still has rounds left to fire? The Sejjil just entered this war. The dancing missile, the weapon Iran saved for when the defenses were weakest. And Israel's defenses have never been weaker than they are right now. Oil hit $106 today. Dubai airport was evacuated. Trump is threatening NATO allies. The Pope is begging for peace. And somewhere in Iran, in a hardened bunker on a mobile launcher, ready to fire in minutes with no fueling required, another Sejjil is waiting, coated in anti-radar material, loaded with a maneuvering warhead, pointed at a city where 4 million people are going about their lives. The race to depletion is on. And the Sejjil just changed the odds. This is War Clock. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Share this video, because understanding this missile is understanding how this war ends. I'll see you in the next one.